Hi, and welcome to Tech Tuesday. This is Catherine. Today we'll be talking about password management, how to make good passwords, how to store or to remember passwords. So any questions about that, feel free to hit me with that anytime in the chat or in the Q&A. Let's see. Okay, so the slides and the recording will be sent to all registered attendees. That means you, within the next 2 or 3 days, so most likely Thursday or Friday. You may use the Q&A in the chat to ask questions. There will also be time for questions at the end if you have something a little bit more tangential or if you think of something later. Also, if you would like to ask questions on voice at the end, I will be unmuting people who request to be unmuted. And at that point, I will not be recording it any longer, so you can ask them with a little bit more privacy. All right, if you do wish to use the chat, note that unless you select all panelists and attendees, your comments will only be sent to me since I'm the only panelist today. So that's a matter of, do you want to share a resource with your fellow attendees, or do you just want to ask me a question? Up to you. So as we get started, I want to think about for a moment, what is the ideal password? It would be hard for people to guess. That's both people you know and people that you don't really know, but who are able to look you up, whether it's on social media, in the phone book, etc., any method for finding you. Hard for computers to guess, that is to say, with a program that quickly guesses random passwords, but easy for you to remember. Now, obviously, this is a tall order, so I will be covering some tools to make that easier. Oops. All right, so in order for it to be hard for people to guess, you want to avoid things that a lot of people know about you, or which would be easy for people who don't know you very well to find out. Things like your date of birth, your anniversary, the name of your favorite sports team, your favorite celebrity, the name of your son, daughter, dog, cat, etc. Anything that you're in the habit of sharing on social media, or which is a matter of public record that someone can easily discover, you would want to avoid using that as a password unless you're able to put it in some kind of code that only you would be able to guess. This might seem obvious, but I have seen people use this type of things as passwords. I know because they've told me. For something that's hard for computers to guess, you want to make a long password. It doesn't necessarily have to be the maximum length of the password field, but if it's close to the maximum length, that is good. The more types of characters, that is lower and uppercase letters, numbers, and symbols, the better. And you want to avoid passwords that solely consist of a single word or a common phrase that could be found in an average dictionary, because many times these programs that guess passwords do contain at least some words from the dictionary, as well as some of the more common passwords that are used. Any questions so far? All right, well, you can definitely send in your questions later, even if it's relating to the first few slides. So in order to make a password that's easier to remember, you can either create a mnemonic, that is, you would create either a phrase or a mental image that helps you remember something that would otherwise be a little bit nonsensical, because oftentimes the best passwords are somewhat nonsensical, at least to people that are not you. It's also valid to write it down as long as you store that list of passwords in a safe place. So you don't want it stuck to your, a Post-it note on the edge of your computer screen in an open plan workplace. You don't want it in a notebook if you're the kind of that you carry around, if you're the kind of person like me who accidentally forgets things places. But if you have, you have it in a locked drawer or something where if people are breaking into that, you have bigger problems anyway, that's fine. The other thing you can do is use password management software, which will remember all of your passwords for you, so you only have to remember the master password. So, as I just stated, if you use a password manager, you only need to remember the master password, at any time. And the password manager can create and update passwords for you. Additionally, if you have the same password manager installed in multiple devices, many of them support having, for example, your phone and your computer, and then they'll update the passwords between them. So you don't have to manually go in and go, oh, I had forgotten that I changed my password for my bank account, and now I have to input it on my phone on the little tiny touchscreen keyboard and so forth. Instead, you just enter the master password periodically to sort of assure the password manager that it is in fact you accessing it. And then it enters the passwords for the various websites and services. Another thing you can do is activate two-factor authentication. Now, this doesn't specifically pertain to passwords per se, because what it is a service offered by many websites or programs that have accounts associated with them, where in addition to your username and password, they ask for some other something to confirm your identity. Generally a code that is generated and changed periodically, like once every minute or once every 2 minutes. So for example, they might send you a text message with a verification code, and then within a certain time frame, you have to enter that code in addition to your password and username in order to get in. Or you'll have a phone app that will generate a verification code. Or you might have a USB device that you connect to your computer and then you push a button to tell the program that it's you. And what this does is it provides additional security even if someone manages to guess your password, because they would have to have this piece of information that is constantly changing in order to access your account. Now, if you believe your password has been compromised, you will still want to change it as soon as is reasonably practical, but it does mean that they might not be able to access your account. The other thing to note is that if you struggle to enter information quickly, like you're a very slow typist, or you struggle with the touchscreen controls on your phone, then two-factor authentication might be an additional barrier for you. So I would consider whether it's worth it in that case. However, if it's not too difficult for you to use, I would definitely recommend activating it for any service where you have, say, your social security number, your bank account, or other really important information entered. So I will be talking, in answer to your question, one attendee asked, is password management a free app? I will be covering a few options for free password managers. There are both free and paid options, but some of the free ones are good. Not all of them, of course. And you might already have one if you are on an Apple device. So getting to that, the most recommended, according to reviews that I could find, free password managers are the following two. The first one is LastPass, which is a premium service. So they have a paid tier that's, I think, around $3 a month, $30 a year or so. They have a paid tier, but they also have a free version. And what distinguishes them from the free versions of a lot of other password managers is that at that free tier, you can still have multiple devices that are using this software, and they do work on multiple systems. So you can install it on your Windows computer, on your Mac or Linux computer, or on your iPhone, iPad, or Android device, and synchronize the passwords between them. Okay, I will get to that question in a second. The other one I would recommend is KeePass, which is completely free, and it is an open source software, which means that the source code, the programming that underlies the software is available for free as well. The issue with KeePass, though, is it is a little bit more difficult to use by all accounts. And so if you're hesitating to learn new software, you may want to avoid it in favor of something that's a little bit simpler. And also that aside from the Windows version, the other versions are unofficial. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, but they're not supported by the original developers. Okay. Still, two options to consider. And we had a question, so I'm going to bring that up. Let's see. When I leave an email to retrieve a verification code, I can't get back to the original email waiting for the code. If you could just tell me in the chat what service this is referring to. Are you trying to get a verification code from your email provider or your bank, or what is it? Because that sounds like a specific tech support with whatever service that is. And I'll get to that later once you give me that answer. If you have Apple devices, the iCloud keychain, also known as Apple Keychain, is actually quite good. And it is included for free with your Mac OS X or iOS or iPad OS device. Okay. So this is only a good option if you are mainly or exclusively in that Apple ecosystem. That is to say that your computer is some kind of a Mac and your smartphone, if any, is an iPhone. And maybe if you have a tablet, well, then that tablet is an iPad, right? If you're exclusively in that ecosystem, then you can have iCloud on all of your devices, and it'll share your passwords between the devices securely and synchronize. But the problem is if you have, let's say you have a MacBook, but you have an Android phone, or you have an iPhone via a Windows computer, you're not going to be able to have that on both systems. So you would either have to manually update two password managers, which becomes a little bit problematic, or have one where you're not using a password manager. Okay. So I would recommend for you to make an appointment to with our tech drop-in folks. I'll have the email for that at the end of the slideshow, and we can dig into your specific problem regarding verification codes. I will say, though, if you can go to your email, if you're trying to retrieve the original email that had the code or what have you, or where you requested the code, most email services should have a search function. So you would say, like, let's say that you signed up for a class via Eventbrite, then you could search for Eventbrite in the search box of your email program or web email. So that might help you retrieve emails if that's what you're struggling with. But that's a little bit of a side thing. Let's see. I will give you guys a second in case there are any other questions before we move on. Okay, so I include this slide where it says see more reviews with links to PC Mag and CNET because I struggled to identify which of the paid password managers might be the best. It looks like there's quite a few that are pretty good, and no two reviewers seem to be able to agree on which one's better. So you'd want to actually read the reviews and try to determine if you want to pay that money and if one of the password managers offers the features you need as compared to the others. I will just say, though, that most of them seem to have a price point around $3 a month or $30 to $40 a year, which is about the same amount. And the ones that are more expensive than that are not necessarily better. So when you're comparing them, to just keep that in mind and maybe go for the ones that are at that common price point if you do decide that it's worth spending money on a password manager. I do like to primarily recommend free software in these classes, though, just because I know that a lot of us struggle with funds, especially right now. All right, so this is optional, but if any of you would like to do this activity, I'll give you a little bit of time to let me know in chat whether that appeals to you or not. You can always, when you receive the slide within the next couple of days, you can always go through it on your own. If you do this activity right now and decide to share your password, which you don't have to, don't use that password for any websites, all right? So the first option is you can think of a phrase or a quotation which you can easily remember that is more than 8 words long, and then take the first letter of each word to create an acronym, which would then be at least 9 letters long. So that's a somewhat long password, right? And then for additional security, you can replace some of them with special characters or with numbers, or you can add special characters or numbers somewhere into the password. The other option is you would think of a nonsense phrase that is at least 3 words long. So something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, 3 words that you wouldn't normally combine. And then you replace some of the letters with special characters or numbers. In fact, if you have a website that allows very long passwords, you can create one that is purely words without any special characters, and that will still be reasonably secure, although not quite as secure as if you add some special characters. And the reason to suggest these methods is that if you create something that's made of words, then you can have a mental image that represents those words that will be easier to remember than if it was just random letters and numbers, all right? So I'll wait a little bit just to see if anyone wants to do this. Otherwise, you can always send questions. With option 2, you would, as long as your words are at least 3 letters long, then you use the entire word. Okay, so option 2 is you take a nonsense phrase using the entire word. And so as long as all of your words are at least 3 letters long, it'll be at least a 9-letter password. Okay, so an example. Let's do an example for option 2. And I will leave the chat open so that I can put it in the chat so you can see my results. I'm going to also open a notebook, though you can't see that. So I can write it down, because I find it easier to work through these types of word things if I am writing them. So you take some, let's say 3 nouns, okay, because that way it won't be a grammatical sentence. Let's say, snow, and something unrelated to snow candy, and then zebra. So that's somewhat random, right? And so I'm going to type that in the chat. But that's not quite long enough to, without special characters, be a really good example. So you can do something like do common replacements and make some of the letters capital and add an exclamation point. And then in the next slide, we'll have a website that'll let you check how good that result was. And so you can always make it longer. For example, you go from that second one. You can always make it longer if necessary. You should also consider how typable it is, because this is a little bit awkward to type right now. You add another one, another word to the end to make it more secure. Of course, that's assuming you don't run into the limit of your password box. And then you would start creating a picture for this. So you say, okay, so there's a zebra made out of candy standing in the snow. And that's sort of a comical image, so maybe that will help you remember it. Okay. So another consideration is that one of the most common ways that people get their accounts compromised is through phishing. That's PHISH, phish, which is where someone impersonates, say, your tech support company, your bank, your internet service provider, etc., some outfit with whom you have an account or who might be providing support for your account, and asks for your password or asks you to log into a fraudulent site. So just know that these outfits, they have access to your account anyway. Generally speaking, they will have some procedures where you have to give explicit permission for them to access your account, or they're only able to access it for certain purposes and in certain ways. But your bank doesn't need your password to be able to do things to your account. They just need you to prove who you are, right? So if someone claiming to be your bank emails you asking for your password, they're not your bank, all right? So just be cautious with those types of emails. Maybe ask someone you trust if you're not sure. And here's the service I was talking about, this password strength checker. So this will be in the slides. It'll be clickable once you get the email with these slides. I also linked an article about two-factor authentication, because there's a certain level of detail with that I didn't feel that I had the time to fully dig into. And then there's a link with the list of the most common passwords according to various sources as compiled by Wikipedia. So I'm just going to click this strength checker right now. I'm going to open the chat again, and we'll take that second password I had, and we'll see how strong it is. And this will be measured in time. So they say that it would take a computer 200 million years to crack your password. That's pretty good. I didn't even put the exclamation point in there. If, on the other hand, I just put the letters, let's see how that works. Snow, candy, zebra, but all in lowercase letters. Come on. Copy, paste. 51 years. That's still pretty good. So you can see that creating longish passwords out of nonsense phrases is not bad at all. But if I just said, let's say, password instantly, because it's going to be the first thing it guessed, because it's about in the top 20 or 30 passwords that people use. or if I said something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instantly. So you can always use this site to get an idea of how secure your password is. And you don't even have to use the exact password for that to work. Okay, it's not letting me go to the full screen again, but that's all right. So that reaches the end of the scheduled presentation. I will, however, be sticking around for a while for questions. So thank you for coming. If you have further questions or you'd like to schedule a tech drop-in session, please visit ssfpladm at plsinfo.org. Send us an email. That is our public-facing email where you can ask account questions as well, or questions about checking out books, etc. Once again, these slides and recording will be sent to you within the next 2 or 3 days, and the recording will be posted on the website as well. If you visit us next Tuesday, the session is about Google Drive, and that will be with my colleague Stacy, I believe. We've also been asked to share information about COVID-19 vaccination. If you're interested in receiving a vaccination, you can visit this website, which is smchealth.org/COVID-19 vaccination. What happened? There we go. Or you can contact your healthcare provider. If you are not with a healthcare provider, you may want to contact County Health if you're a county resident. Okay. So to answer that question, if some website will not allow special characters or uppercase or lowercase, then your best solution is to make your password particularly nonsensical and particularly long as they will allow. It is unfortunate but true that websites that place strong limits, that is, say very narrow limits on the type of password you can create, such as it has to be a certain exact length or it can't have any special characters, those passwords are less secure. Another thing you can do is change your password frequently. All right, which is a good idea regardless. I mean, let's say if you go to this how secure is my password and it says the will take 6 months to crack. Well, if you change your password every 6 months, that's probably fine. So this is the link for San Mateo County residents. I didn't put a link for San Francisco County residents because I am not in San Francisco County. We are the South San Francisco Library, which is located in San Mateo County, but I will look up the link for you. And I will post the San Mateo County link in chat if I can. Here's what the website looks like for San Mateo County, and I'm putting it in the chat right now. And if Zoom will cooperate. There we go, there's Bing. Here's the San Francisco website. I know we do have people visiting us from different counties, which is fine. But here's the website. In general, you'll probably want to contact your healthcare provider if you do have one. They may have further information for you. But if you do not have one, you will be dependent most likely on the city or county of your residence. Okay, and I'm going to stop recording so that we can ask questions more freely. But once again, thank you for coming.